Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on customer loyalty. If you can't fight with price, fight with loyalty. Before we get started, I'd like to go through a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to us by typing in your question in the pane on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to submit questions at any stage during the presentation, and we'll try our best to get to them at the end of the presentation. Also, today's webinar will be recorded and a playback link will be sent to you and everyone who has registered. So I'd like to start off by introducing our speaker for today, and our speaker is Alice Almeida. She is the Manager of Innovation and Insight here at Hitwise. Alice, I'd like to take the guys through just a bit of your background. So Alice has had extensive research, extensive years of research and insights experience in industries across media, brand and advertising. She's worked at some great outlets like Channel 9, Channel 7 and News Digital Media and Fairfax. And Alice specialises in audience segmentation and brand research. So Alice, over to you to start the presentation.
Great, thank you Helen, and thanks for everybody for joining us on a Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. I know you're all incredibly busy. So just to give you a bit of background about this presentation, I presented at the iMedia Online Retail Summit about a month or so ago, and we decided to base it on loyalty because we feel that that's one of the hot topics of this year. I think because of the massive amount of data that brands and third-party research providers have, that this is now coming up for discussion. Obviously, also there's an incredibly competitive market, which is, loyalty is helping as well. So this presentation is the extended version of that at the conference. So if you were in that event and you saw me speak, this is going to be slightly different. So hopefully I don't bore you if you did attend that. The reason that we decided to do this as a webinar is I got quite a bit of feedback, which is great, that they were disappointed that they'd missed it at the conference. So we thought we'd extend it out to everybody else, and yeah, so I hope you enjoy it. So for many, many years I've covered retail in my career, and one of the things that's always kind of come up in the last few years is that retail is dead. And it's, this is just a screenshot of Google. I went there and typed in retail is. The first thing that came up was detail, and the second thing that came up is dead. So that kind of build up this story that there's so much doom and gloom around the retail industry in Australia. They think that it's dying, that major brands are shutting down and closing, but my opinion is it's not, and it's far from it. So I just took a snapshot of those that were active on our panel in May this year, and there were 13.4 million Australians who visited a shopping and classifieds website in May. So with a population of 24 million, we can't exactly say that it's dying because there's a lot of interest there. This was across almost 16,500 websites. 72% of those were domestic and 28% were international. And then most importantly, 46% of these visits were via a mobile device. So why I'm showing you these stats are to basically back up that retail is not dead, but the way that consumers are buying and researching products is drastically changing. In particular, mobile. Mobile is a device, is a platform that's rarely considered, and with 46% of these transactions and searches done on this device, it needs to be considered. So I wanted to have a look at some of the big retail brands that are using ranking quite highly in search. So I captured all of the retail search terms for May, and these are some of Australia's leading brands that have come up. So as you can see, Australian consumers are searching for a wide variety of brands across a wide variety of products. So you've got ASOS there, Harvey Norman, Ticketek, Dan Murphy's, so some really big, well-established brands across a variety of products. Now, one of the things that I wanted to showcase here is I think the reason that there is this perception that there's a lot of doom and gloom in the retail industry is every day there's a new sale that's coming out. So this is just an example of, I randomly selected one Friday and selected every single email that I got from a brand that I'm a member of, and every email that came through to me that day had a big sale or some kind of special deal. So buy 2 items, get the third free, $50 off, 40% off. So there was so much competition from the sale market. And all of these examples here are all from the same kind of genre within the industry. So it just showcased that there was a lot of competition out there to get my money. So it seems that many brands are taking the whole fight with price approach, and while sales are a great way in shifting old stock, when you start relying on them to stay afloat, it turns into a rather nasty treadmill. So as a consumer, this is great. You know, you find something you love, wait a week and it becomes on sale. So the problem is Australian consumers are being trained to not pay full price. They're being trained to wait until the sales come out. So this is a really dangerous habit for us to pick up. Because obviously as a brand you can't rely on this. So more sales equals more customers, hurrah, that's great. So obviously you'll see a big spike in your numbers over a period of time, but the problem is unless there's a relationship post the sale, this is where all the numbers start to decline significantly. So in this day and age, brands need to think long term. They need to think beyond the sale, and this is where loyalty obviously comes into it. So the problem with sales, it brings in customers, which is great, but it can also lead to a broken business. So many of Australia's well-known and loved brands in the past 10, 15 years have actually gone kaput because they, you know, struggle to kind of survive in this industry. So loyalty, that's what this presentation is all about. As I mentioned before, loyalty is the key to solving this problem, and Australian consumers have become very fickle, and brand loyalty is on the decline. There's quite a few reports that have been released in the last 12 to 24 months about this. But loyalty is what can bring a consumer back beyond the sale. It has been around for years, but in a fairly simplistic way. So the way that it has been around is you sign up for a membership card, and when you spend over a certain amount, you get a reward of X. But it always seems to be a one-way relationship. So some brands are doing it incredibly well. So think of airlines and the loyalty programs that they offer. But for those who don't want to fight the price, loyalty is the answer. So I wanted to get an example of a really good chart which showcased how you can come up with brand loyalty. So of course I went to Google and I searched brand loyalty programs and charts, and every one that came back showcased nearly the same segments within the chart, but it didn't actually capture something which I believe is the most important factor when you're coming up with a brand loyalty program. So obviously there was product awareness, perception, trial, trust and repeat, but what they missed was insights. Now I've worked in insights for 15 years and to put it plainly, I think insights has only become cool and popular in the last couple of years. And a lot of companies are now starting to incorporate insights into all of their different loyalty programs that they're doing. But there's still a lot of brands and clients out there that are not. So the two areas that need more love and to obviously assist with brand loyalty, number one is customers, and number two is the use of customer data. So one thing that I wanted to also flag here is this might sound like common sense to a lot of you, I'm assuming to most of you. However, we come across a lot of brands which are they need to simplify things. So they're jumping ahead 10 steps when they need to get step 1, 2, 3 sorted, which is where this area kind of falls into. So the first stop in doing anything at all is to understand your consumers. I don't mean by profiling the age or the gender. I mean getting to know your consumers by who they are in, for example, their life stage. We can find this out through the use of our data. So many brands collect incredibly valuable data when a customer signs up for a membership card and they don't do anything with it at all. This is where we need to educate brands and clients to be able to use that data that they are collecting in a more efficient way. So this is a slide that I use in quite a lot of my presentations because I think it represents the message that I'm trying to get across. So yes, age and gender is important and it is a segment that has a place in marketing, but I feel in this day and age the most important segments that you need to consider are interests, life stage is a big one, lifestyle, attitudes, online behaviours, and financial situation. So all of these segments here can impact how a consumer will act and behave. And this all makes sense in the loyalty in a second. I'll go into it. This is another one of my favourite slides. So here we have 5 women. They're all 30, and as you can see, they're all in very different life stages. And this kind of showcases the importance of understanding where your consumers are at, not from an age and gender point of view, but from a life stage point of view. So I'll just bring up the information here on each segment. So we've got Cara, who's a student. She doesn't make that much money because she's working part-time. She's a budget shopper. She compares her prices. She waits for all the sales to come out, and the things that she's spending money on is uni gear and clothes, and usually on the lower end of the cost for clothes. Kate is a new mum. She's staying at home. She's just bought a house, so she's paying it off. She's obviously spending quite a lot of money on her children. Time poor. She's very time poor. Image is still important to her, but she doesn't have a lot of time to put into it. Then you've got Viv. Viv is at the other end. She's a fashion assistant. She makes relatively good money. She relies heavily on her credit card. She spends on clothes and travel. She is a brand, I don't like the term brand tart, but she loves her brands. And to her, image is key. She's got to look good and she's got to look polished. Then you've got Emma, who's a lawyer. She's working full-time, recently married, buying a house, planning a family. Makes quite good money, image is key, she loves brands and she has expensive taste. And then you've got Eloise, who's the emergency doctor, so she's working full-time, she's making a lot of money, but she is incredibly time poor. She doesn't shop. Anything that she does buy is big ticket items. She's not into brands. She's, eating on the run. So the point that I'm making with this slide is you have 5 women, all the same age, all at very, very different life stages, and all have very different requirements and needs. So as a marketer, you need to understand what their different requirements and needs are, what are they in the market for, and target those people who have shown an interest in your product or brand. So rather than rely on an age segment of women 25 to 34, where, this is just taking 30-year-olds, for example. If you take 25 to 34, the range of women that you're going to have in that age group is going to be phenomenal. So capture those people that have shown an interest in your product or brand, and then define them rather than define your audience and then see if they're interested in your brand. So I've come up with a couple of suggestions and recommendations, and these are just based off, the data that we've been exposed to here at Hitwise, and also my many years in this industry. And my first and foremost is getting to know your customers. And I know that I sound like a broken record, but this to me is the one and only most important factor in all of marketing. And by getting to know your customers, as I said in the previous slide, it's not about age and gender, it's about where they are at life stage. So who are they, what do they like, where can they be found, what else are they in the market for, and what are they searching for. So here's just a quick snapshot of one person that we've taken, and we've tracked their behaviours online. So they're looking very likely to buy a new car in the next 6 months, and it's likely to be fun. She travels 2 times a year, and it's usually the beach vacations. She's addicted to Netflix, but who isn't? She does 3 hours a week on retail, in particular the Iconic. So just by understanding these kind of online behaviours, you can already build a profile in your mind of who this person is going to be like. So this is where the importance of getting to know your customers really comes through. And by understanding who your customers are, you're able to build an effective loyalty program that will deliver what they want when they want. So loyalty is not ignoring a certain demographic, and this is another thing that I'm quite passionate about. So I had a look at those who were showing a strong interest in online retail in May 2016, and I thought it would be these young guys here. 25% were 25 to 34. So I sadly am just out of that age bracket, but I perceived that that would be the audience that would be the heaviest and most active online. What I didn't expect is 28% were 55 plus. So there's more people 55 plus researching online retail than there is people 25 to 34. So one of the things that fascinates me about people 55 plus is it seems to be the forgotten demographic. It seems to be the demographic that people don't want to admit that they have, or unless you're in a retirement company. But in actual fact, people 55 plus spent $2 billion last year. So that should be reason enough to want them. So this is where understanding your audience and accepting the audiences that you might not want is going to be key. In this tough market, you've got to kind of take, your audiences from all areas. So consider people 55 plus as a serious consumer because they're the ones who are going to be spending quite a lot. And then we've just got the gender split here, which is fairly even. So again, this is similar to the same point before, accepting all audience segments. So an example I had here is I had a high-end product come to me a couple of years ago and say, we are an affluent product only, we only attract people with an income of $250,000. And I thought, okay, that's quite interesting because I know quite a few people who don't earn that amount of money who are buying your product. But because they wanted to be perceived as a high-end brand, they were only wanting to target people at 250 plus. So this is just a quick example of how, if you have the ability to narrow your consumer base down, then brilliant, well done. But majority of people don't. So open it up to those who are actually able to purchase your product, irrelevant of how much they earn, and that's obviously going to see an increase. So just because your audience has money, it doesn't necessarily mean that they throw it around. Some of the people with the tightest wallet that I know also have quite a lot of money, and there's probably a reason why they have a lot of money, because they're not spending. So there's two segments here of online shoppers for the month of May. So you've got deal hunters who are on less than 40K. These people, they don't have that much money, so they are seeking out the deals. And then, as I said before, you've got the bargain hunters who have money and they earn 100K or more, and there's almost 30% of those. So understanding that, that household income should not impact who your consumer base is, because it can vary very differently. The next thing I wanted to have a look at is that loyalty is about understanding their search language. So this is key because obviously one of the messages that I hope you'll get from this is loyalty is all about a two-way relationship. It's all about communication. And so if you want to be speaking the right language to your consumers, you need to understand the language that they speak in. So having access to search term data gives you an incredible insight into what consumers are actively seeking out, which keeps you ahead of the game. From this Wordle chart, we can see that Australian consumers are looking at saving money and the brands that are most searched for. So obviously here we've got sale, price and cheap for some of the most used brands, some of the most used terms. And then you've got the likes of Bunnings, Target, Harvey Norman, which are coming up trumps as well. But the gold is actually looking at the products that they're searching. So bed, bag, dress, shoes, boots, books, battery. All of these kind of things are products that consumers are actively in the market searching for. So if you are somebody who's selling any of those products, understand who are these people that are putting these search terms in and build audience segments that way. So loyalty is also understanding the competition. In part of my career, I was told that never to focus on the competitors, but focus on what you do and do it brilliantly. And whilst that sounds great, you have to keep the sideways glance on your competitors, because I believe if you're too narrowly focused on what you're doing, you're missing what's actually happening around you. So who is gaining the most amount of results from search, in particular your search terms? What sites are attracting your consumers? For apparel and accessories, the Iconic are the clear leader here, followed by ASOS. These two sites have changed the way that younger Australians are shopping for fashion. So when you look at appliance and electronics, Harvey Norman, JB Hi-Fi and Kogan are the standouts. So Kogan, I'm sure most of you know, is only an online portal. You can only buy it through there. Same with Iconic and ASOS. So these stores, these brands don't actually have stores that you can physically visit. They only have online websites. So by understanding who you're up against in the competitive market also helps to see, from a brand loyalty perspective, who is potentially stealing your customers, who is stealing your consumers. And by having a look at their search behavior and their website behavior, you can find this. So loyalty is also using their personal data for good. Because I work in data, I get frustrated when I see that brands and products aren't using the data to its best of its ability. And one of the things that strikes me as quite challenging or also fascinating is I recently went to a retail store to buy a jumper, and when I went to the checkout, I said, I think I've got a membership card in here. And she said, oh, you don't, because we don't have a membership program. And I actually felt a little bit cheated and flawed, and I thought, do I still want to go through and make this transaction? Do I still want to buy this product? Because I know that if I go to that store over there, I will get points which will lead to something else. So in this day and age, consumers are expecting more from brands, and if they're not getting it, if it doesn't feel like a two-way relationship, they're going elsewhere. So using personal data for good. So some of the things that brands can actually capture by having a membership program in place is how often do they shop? Are they buying from us weekly? Are they buying from us monthly, 6 months, once a year? How much are they spending on each transaction? What items are they mainly buying, and what else could they be interested in? So by understanding these different segments within the customer data that you capture, you can obviously build out different loyalty levels, which will help deliver the right kind of offering and content to the different loyalty groups. And a nice little picture. So loyalty is also a two-way conversation. I think I've kind of said this a few too many times this presentation, but this is all about, you know, a consumer needs to feel like it's wanted and it's needed, and it also needs to feel like there's a sense of community when it comes to a brand. So a recent report has come out stating that the expectation of rewards program is now at an all-time high. So this goes back to my story before about going to buy the jumper. So I think because consumers are now expecting it, brands need to kind of look at their loyalty program and make sure that they're delivering the right kind of things. And they have to also know that it's not just the relationship doesn't end at the end of the transaction, that it needs to follow through. So having a look at some of these points here, consumer engagement is critical in building any kind of loyalty. It has to be a two-way conversation. The sale is not the end of the relationship. You have the opportunity to follow through and keep these people on board. So use the data that you have and keep the conversation going. So there's an example I wanted to showcase here. I am a member of Country Road along with a lot of other women out there, and one of the things that I love that they do is, and I've heard this from many other people as well, is if you buy a pair of boots from them, the next day they will send you an email and say, you bought these boots yesterday, that looks fabulous with this jacket, and because you're a gold member you get 20% off. So that is I spend money with them, they come back to me and say, we appreciate you, we value you, so here's a discount and here's some advice. And so that instantly drove me in store, and I know that it drove a lot of my friends in store as well. So this is a prime example that it is a two-way conversation, and brands who want to do loyalty well need to, you know, appreciate that that is the case. Give and take, same kind of thing. Brands that share the harvest of their success with their audience are the ones that sustain the best momentum. I really love this quote because I think it sums up loyalty to a T. An example that I wanted to showcase here was Converse. So Converse are a brand which are doing this incredibly well about keeping the conversations and the transactions going. So I went online to buy my husband a pair of Converse because he drastically needed some. And when I purchased them, I had to put in some of my details, and 10 minutes later after the transaction, I received this email saying, hey, it was nice meeting you. We'd like to get to know you better, so if you could give us a bit more information about yourself, we'll give you 10% off. So once again, I think because I work in the industry, was so impressed by this, I went back in, I gave them more information, and then because I got 10% off, I bought a pair of shoes myself. So they got a sale that they wouldn't have originally got without understanding a bit about the consumer, but also understanding that by giving something to the consumer, they're more likely to end with a sale. So loyalty is also appreciating the community that you do have. So I believe that in order to keep your consumers loyal, you need to look at them as a community group. So one of the things that I have said is it doesn't need to be about transactions only. Nothing is more valuable than your consumers being your ambassadors as well. This is where those sales or those you know, paybacks come into play. But understanding who they are and what they are like, the potential for building sub-communities grows. So having a website shouldn't just be about an e-commerce platform. It should be a place where your consumers can come and they can learn about your products, they can learn about how to wear your products, or they can learn about technology, they can learn about travel destinations, or whatever it is that you offer. There's an opportunity to build out content areas within your website which will help build a community, which obviously as soon as somebody feels like they're part of a community, they instantly become loyal and protective and defensive. So this is the key here. Social media, it's incredibly powerful loyalty platform. So, utilize any of those insights with your own to develop loyalty levels. So obviously if you know that some of your people that come to your website and they're on your database are active across your social media sections, that is also giving you valuable insight as well. So marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but the stories you tell. So, I think marketing has become very strong on the stories, especially with the, increase in data that's out there. So this is one of my favorite charts, and this showcases how we can work with brands. But loyalty it's about not focusing on your favorites. So many of the brands that we've come across have gone, we know who our audience is and we want to focus purely on them. And by doing that, they ignore the other demographics and the other segments that come up around and show interest in their brand. But what they also don't understand, or they don't get insight to, is how loyal are their loyal consumer base? Are they 100% dedicated, or are they sneaking off on the side to visit the competitor's website? So one of the things that we do at Hitwise is we can actually have a look at a brand's data or their subscribers' database, and we can match it with our data. And from that we can actually show where they're overrepresented in certain demographics, and we can also go, okay, so for example here, the client that we used here, the most valuable were A, B's, E's and G's. So these are people that were actually constantly visiting their website and also on their subscription database. Then we've got these people who were visiting, but they weren't actually on their database. And then you've got the next group, which is not visiting but on their database, and then you've got this group which is doing neither. So by understanding these 4 different segments, you're able to go, okay, so we are not capturing this style of person. We know that they should be buying our product, so let's do some more insights in that. The other thing is we can go, okay, so of the group who are the most over-indexed and in visitors and consumers, we can capture that group and go, okay, these are obviously our loyalists. Let's see what other websites they're going to. So if you are, for example, Woolworths, you can see how many of these clients are going to Coles or to Aldi. So you can get an insight as to how loyal these actual consumers are. This is just key insight for your own sake to go, okay, so this is an area that we potentially need to improve on. And I think the last slide is loyalty is controlled by the consumer first and foremost, and this is why it becomes vitally important to understand everything that you possibly can about the consumer. And nothing gives you more information than being able to understand and profile a consumer through their online behaviours, because from that you can actually capture what they are in the market for. You can look down at size level, you can look down at product, destination level, you can have a look at their other restrictions. Are they, under a little bit of financial strain at the moment? Like, by understanding their online behaviour, you can build up incredibly niche profiles of who your consumers are, and you can deliver the right content and loyalty program to that consumer. So that's it all for loyalty. I hope that kind of gave you a bit of a taste on what I believe could help with brands getting a loyalty program up and running. In summary, it is all about the consumer and it is all about understanding them. We do have an amazing ability at Hitwise to be able to profile who your exact consumers are, who your competitors' consumers are, and by understanding that, you can come up with quite a fantastic loyalty program.
Great. Well, thanks so much for that, Alice. That was great. And that does conclude the content portion of our webinar today. We do have a couple of questions, Alice, and I know we're just on time, so I might just pick out one for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great. So one of the questions we did have was, I work for an airline company and we capture our own loyalty data. Can we cross-analyze our data with your online behavioural data?
Most definitely. So I'm assuming that question came in before my slide just previously. I'll see if I can go back. So this slide here, so most definitely we can merge your database with ours, and I mean the opportunities from there are endless. So I suppose if you're still listening, the person that asked that question, please be in touch, because we'd love to discuss how we can actually come up with some great opportunities for you.
Great. Thanks for that, Alice. Well, that was fantastic. For anyone that wants to contact us, you can do so by reaching out to us on that link at the screen right now. So feel free to contact us with any inquiries at all, and we'll get back to you and answer all your questions. So thanks again, Alice, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you very much.